Let's do it. I love it. Bryan, so great to meet you, sir. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Awesome, Joe. Good to be with you.
Yes, sir. So before we get into your work, I want to know this. I always start out with the whole COVID question. 5.5, 6 years ago, this thing was changing our lives, putting the grand mirror in front of our faces. How did you get through that coronavirus era, and how has it changed the way that you approach living today?
I leaned into it. I looked at it as a license to travel. I thought, if everybody's going to be sitting at home, I'm going to go out and see the world, and that's what I did. I remember there was only like three countries that were open at the time, and I went to Mexico and spent like 3 4 months just traveling around Mexico, and then I would just go wherever was open, and it was some of the best traveling I ever did was
Wow.
during COVID. So I looked at it as an opportunity.
That's fascinating. I hear a lot of stories of people that got, even people that had families would get into an RV and they just went. That's
Exactly.
ideal, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the philosophy of that time period is that we're not going to get this back. We're all in this monopolistic mindset of, we're all living through this. So do the best you can, like with anything
Exactly.
else, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
I saw it as an opportunity. Everybody was kind of going crazy, going wacko. I thought, hey man, I'm going to lean into this, and I thought my business GreenPal was going to suffer, but we actually grew through that. So it was an opportunity for us.
so as a business leader, I want to get to the essence of what you do on a daily basis. And kids are a truth serum. If I put you in front of 12 and 13-year-olds at a career day at a school, and one of the kids wanted to know what you do for a living, how do you craft that answer?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I like to say we need to explain what we do so an eighth grader could understand it. So I like that framing. GreenPal is basically like the Uber for lawn care. So if you need somebody to mow your yard, you push a button, someone comes and does it. It's like the magic box, the magic button for getting lawn mowing done. And so I hope that a grade schooler could understand that.
So, what did you want to be when you were that age? What was your dream gig?
Ooh, when I was younger, I really wanted to be a professional soccer player.
Okay.
And my dad, I'll never forget this. My dad said, son, we go to these tournaments, and I'll have to tell you, man, you're good, but you're not as good as these other kids. And you're not gonna be a professional soccer player. He
Wow.
said, he said, but what you could do, you are smart, and you could start a business. You might think about that. And so he kind of brought me back down to earth and got me thinking practical, and actually made me go start my first business. He made me mow the neighbor's yard one day, and luckily he did that, because that was my first business, and I grew that into a real company. And so I was very fortunate to have a practical father that gave me good advice.
So, before we got on, you mentioned Kansas City. You're in Nashville. Where were you born and raised? What were your.
So I'm from Nashville, born and raised in Middle Tennessee, but my folks were from KC, and so I've got some good memories going to KC as a kid. It was a bigger city than Nashville at the time, and so you guys always had cooler stuff than we did. I loved it.
So, what were I mean, aside from your father kind of giving you that talk about being in business and mowing grass when you were young, what were the early things that you think were a part? I mean, by the time we're three, a lot of our personality is set. What do you think happened early on in your life that gave you this backbone to be a successful businessman?
It was a lot of I was not the coolest kid in school. I wasn't the best soccer player. I wasn't popular, and I wasn't like a star athlete. And so I very much had a chip on my shoulder. I wanted to show people that I could build something that mattered, that I could be part of something that was important. And that formed probably as a young kid, and in middle school and in high school, and then in college. And I was fortunate to have that type of childhood, because a lot of the kids that were popular in high school, that was kind of their peak. They don't end up being, as successful as you think they might be. And for me, it was kind of like getting that kind of punch in the stomach as a young man really caused me to have that ambition, have that chip on my shoulder to build something big. And like I was telling you, that little lawn mowing business, I ended up building it to an 8-figure company and selling it. And I think a lot of that ambition kind of stemmed from, not being the cool kid in high school, not being the popular kid in high school. And I wanted to show the world that I could build something that mattered.
So, Give me kind of a snapshot of your professional timeline leading up to your business today. How did you begin from selling that business and starting young to evolving to where you're at today?
Yeah, it started off. So my first business was a lawn mowing company, lawn mowing business, landscaping company. Started mowing grass in the neighborhood where I grew, where I lived, and then through college, I didn't want to take on student loan debt, so I mowed grass all day and went to school at night, and then graduated business school and thought, okay, what am I going to do now? I didn't really want to be a lawn guy my whole life. I really didn't really like the lawn mowing business, to be honest. But I thought, well, I got a decent little small business going here, and I think I had maybe 300 or 400 grand in revenue, and I thought maybe I could scale this, and I took what I learned in business school, made a little business plan, and little by little ended up growing that into a real company. Eventually, getting around 120, 130 employees, 150 employees at the peak, and then it was acquired by a national organization about year 15. And so that was it grew to about an 8-figure business, sold it, and then took about a year off, figured out what I wanted to do, what the next kind of act of my entrepreneurial journey was going to be. And the idea for GreenPal, which is my company now, was one that I kind of had in the back of my head, that you should be able to push a button and get lawn mowing done like you order food on DoorDash or groceries on Instacart. And so that was the idea that we had 10 years ago. And now here we are 10 years later, nationwide in the United States. It's the biggest network of lawn care services that you can hire from your smartphone. And around 300,000 people use it every week for lawn mowing.
So, as an entrepreneur, the cornerstone of what you do is risk. What's the biggest risk that you've taken professionally?
A lot of risk is not taking risk. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's like, if you can think of your whole business as an experiment, and if you can think of like every single thing you do as an experiment, and trying to distill it down into the smallest experiment you can to get the information you need to then lean into it. Like I like to say, we like to fire bullets, then cannonballs. A lot of the riskiest behavior I've had is by not experimenting, is by going with the status quo, going with the sure bet, making moves that I knew would pay off, not in a big way, but that were predictable. And so a lot of the risk was not experimenting, was not uh, embarking on endeavors that had an unpredictable outcome. Because that action produces information. And if you can think about, it doesn't matter what business you're in, if you can think about it as a never ending experiment, it can help you kind of like discover a competitive advantage that maybe you didn't realize that you had.
Who's been your hero? Who's been that inspirational force that's allowed you to find your footing and success as a business owner?
For me, when I was starting GreenPal, especially in Nashville, Tennessee, there wasn't a whole lot of like tech entrepreneurs. And so the first thing I did was I tried to like network and find people that were doing similar things to me. And there just wasn't a lot of them. So I had to like get mentorship, but asynchronously. And what I mean by that is like I had to consume whatever it was that people were putting out. Uh, and they might be like 4 or 5 levels ahead of me. And if I hit them up on LinkedIn, they weren't going to return my call, but I could still get mentorship from them in a way that almost as if I knew them. And so one of those people would be like Travis Kalanick, the founder of Uber. He kind of got dragged through the mud by the media in year like 10 or 12 of that business. But the early days of building that company, the way that they willed that business into existence and the way that they had to fight all of these incumbents, whether it be like literally the mafia in many markets, local city, or the taxing authorities and regulating authorities that did not want Uber, but the people did. The way they did that and the way they brought that innovation to the marketplace was inspirational to me, and I learned a lot from Travis and how they built that company and applied that to my humble little world of lawn mowing.
So, if you could meet any CEO, any entrepreneur alive today that you find admirable, that does it the right way, that may help you on your journey, who would you love to have a lunch with and hang out with?
Probably because Travis isn't the CEO of GreenPal, I mean of Uber anymore, but probably it would be Brian Chesky, the founder of Airbnb. He still runs Airbnb, $100 billion public company. They started it out of spare bedroom. Their story is inspirational. I like to think that he's a smart guy, but he's not like, you listen to an interview with Elon and he's just on another planet.
Yeah.
He's on Mars, literally. And
Yeah.
I can't relate to that. But Brian Chesky, I can. He seems more of like a humble, practical dude that I could learn from. And so that would be, the publicly traded living CEO. Yeah, I would love to have lunch with him.
So the one thing about what you do, obviously, you're highly motivated. There's a lot of things going on. When that alarm clock goes off in the morning, what gets you up to do this at a high level and to also take care of yourself and your family and your soul?
Well, one thing the latter part of your question that I learned when I was building GreenPal was that this is a marathon and your physical health matters. Like literally, if you eat enough ramen soup, it will kill you. And I learned that in the early days of building GreenPal because it was very much like 7 days a week, grinding out 100-hour weeks to get this company going. And I let my physical health decay. And so I had to learn the hard way that you have to like take care of your temple and you have to be in good physical fitness to play this game. And so the way I kind of paid down that debt was I signed up for a marathon and ran a marathon in like 6 months. And that kind of like kicked me in the butt. And I started to feel better and I could run the company better. And so that's something that I'm cognizant of now. And then what keeps me going, like I guess my why is the small business owners that use GreenPal. So we have around 30,000 small landscaping companies that use it. They rely on it for their livelihood. They rely on it to pay their mortgage, to put kids through school, to literally put groceries on the table. And that's important to me. That matters. That's a very serious thing. And so I have to make sure that I stay sharp, that I'm leading the company in the right direction so we can help these professionals get where they're trying to go.
So, what's been your philosophy on work-life balance? Is that something that is attainable? Is that something that exists? I know a lot of CEOs go viral for their answers because it's just not something that makes any sense. What does that mean to you?
For me, I think in my experience, I've never had work-life balance. I am integrated, intertwined at a personal level with what my company is and does and its success. My self-esteem is derived from my business and my personal worth, my personal well-being is derived from the performance of my company. And that's probably not healthy, but I don't know of any other way to be. And so I think to get something going from scratch, I think it's like a 7 day a week thing. I think it's a full contact, like you're going to pour your heart and soul into it. It doesn't matter if it's a tech marketplace like GreenPal or if it's a dry cleaning corner store. Like the person running the convenience store is not working any less or more hard than I am, and vice versa. Like all business is hard, and you're gonna like literally be bought in 7 days a week to make it work. And so for me, I think as a founder, like work-life balance is a trap. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that, and a lot of people feel more comfortable, talking that way. There was a while there where that was taboo to say that. Um, so that's just how I embrace it. 7 days a week. When I wake up, I'm in the shower. I'm thinking about GreenPal. When my head hits the pillow, I'm thinking about GreenPal. And I think if you just like accept that and lean into it, it can help you like enjoy the journey a little bit more.
So, what about retirement? We always focus on our career and what we're doing. We're in the middle of it. But when that word, the big word retirement, like the Hollywood sign in the hills comes up in your brain, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of like halfway tried to retire when I sold my first company. I didn't necessarily like have enough money to go buy a yacht and sit in the Caribbean, but I had enough where I didn't have to work anymore, and that was nice. And I took a year off, and I realized that I was wired to want to be in the game. Something was missing. There was a part of me that was gone, and it didn't feel good. And there was no reason like to get out of bed early in the morning, like you mentioned earlier. There was no answer to the question, if it wasn't for me, then what? And I think it's important to have those things in place. And so for me, my business, my project, the mission of that company is the answer to that. So I kind of like started GreenPal because I wanted to have another mission, another reason to to get better, to get stronger, to get smarter. And so for me, retirement is something I tried. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. I read a stat the other day that like on average 3 years after someone retires, they end up dying like 3 to 5 years later.
Yeah.
I think that's real. So and there's a reason why you see guys like Elon, you know, pushing it to the next level because I think that's just part of the human spirit. If we could just be happy sitting on like a hill, staring at a beautiful ocean all day, and just be content doing that, we could. But the reality is like biology. Like if you did that 200,000 years ago, a tiger would come eat you alive, and like we're just not wired to want to be happy to do that. And I think if you accept that about like the human spirit and understand that you're only going to be happy if you are accomplishing new things, you are breaking down new barriers, you are learning new things, you're doing hard things and you're succeeding, that puts dopamine in your brain for some reason.
Yeah.
I've had to accept that there really it is an infinite game.
So if you were to have a dream tonight and ran into the 18-year-old version of you, and you had a book in your hands, like a coffee table book, and you walked up and handed it and said, "That's your life. That's the life that you've lived so far." Would that young version believe that things have turned out this way?
Uh let me think. Honestly, a lot of what I've accomplished is were goals that I had set. And honestly, um my 19-year-old or 18-year-old self would be like, dude, you need to push it harder. What are you doing? We said we would be this, and this.
Yeah.
While I mean, I had a push mower. That's all I had, and I ended up, growing it to 8 figures in 15 years, and that is an unbelievable like change in circumstances. But on the other hand, like that was what I set out to do, and so I wouldn't be surprised at 18 if I showed myself where I am, and my 18-year-old self would probably say, dude, you need to you need to run harder, push it harder. He wouldn't say, hey, you made it.
Yeah.
He'd say, run harder.
Keep going. So let
Yeah.
me ask you this. If you walked into a room of everybody that knows you as a businessman, as an owner, as a boss, as a success, and you walked in and to humanize yourself a little bit, you told that room one fun story, maybe a great experience in soccer that you had, the best sporting event you've ever witnessed, first concert you went to, jumping out of an airplane, something that would make you a little bit more of a human to those people instead of being a business entity. What fun story would you tell that room?
Ooh, I would probably tell them about the time along the lines of what you were just saying. I would tell them about the time that because I love to travel, and I was telling you about when I went all through Mexico, that I had booked a hike in outside of Mexico. I just thought it was going to be like a little day long hike, and I got there, and the guy that picked me up, it was my guide, asked me, "So how long have you been mountaineering?" And I said, well, what are you talking about? He goes, how long have you been climbing mountains? And I said, I've never climbed a mountain in my life. I thought this was a hike. And he said, no, cabron, we're climbing the tallest mountain in North America, Pico de Orizaba. And I'm like, no, that's not what I signed up for. He goes, yeah, no, that's what we're doing. And so I had to make a decision. Was I going to like turn around and go back to Mexico City, which is a 3 hour drive, or was I going to try to climb this glacier that's like, Everest is 28,000 feet. This damn thing is 21,000 feet, and with no acclimation, no gear, nothing. And I decided, hey, let's just see what happens. How hard could it be? And he ended up loaning me a bunch of stuff, and took us like 48 hours of climbing, and ended up, long story short, ended up getting to the ascent. And then as we're coming down the next day, I see all of these, because it was all at night, and I see all these crosses everywhere. I'm like, what are these crosses? He goes, oh, that's just where all the people that didn't make it. The memorial to people that didn't make it. I'm like, I said, well, how many? He goes, oh, about 20 or 30 people a year die on this mountain. And I was like, he said, but then he said to me, he said, well, but there's something I want to tell you. He said, thank you so much for booking the tour, because only when you book the tour do I get to go on the mountain, and only when I'm on the mountain do I feel alive. So
Wow.
thank you. And I was like, wow, okay, this was worth it. So
Wow, what a great story, man.
yeah, almost I shouldn't have done that, but
But
it ended up being a good story.
yeah, for sure. So, of everything that you've done in your life, everything you've accomplished, overcome, and evolved to, what are you the proudest of?
For me, I'd like to, if my funeral was tomorrow, I would hope that somebody that worked on a project with me would say, you know what, because of that guy, I was able to go places in life that I wouldn't have been able to do. I was able to accomplish things that I wouldn't have been able to do. I was able to work with that guy, and we did great things together. And I would hope my co-founders would say that. I would hope the people that use GreenPal would say that, and maybe even family members would say that. And so, yeah, that's probably what I'm most proud of, is that I worked together with other people, and we did things together that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
So, let's needle in a little further. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that you work with, that you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I think somebody that would describe me and how I would describe myself is very candid, no small talk. Let's get down to business. Let's get things done. Let's let the results speak for themselves. Let's go to the data. Let's not use opinions, and let's just cut the BS and get stuff done. And that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. But for the people who like that, really like it. And so what I have found is like, double down on the people who like my working style, partner up with them, and don't worry about the rest.
So, the most important thing, if anyone wants to get involved, they want to reach out, any of the good business, where do they go?
Yeah, hit us up, greenpal.com. It's free to sign up if you're a vendor or a consumer. And anybody wants to hit me up, just Google my name, Bryan Clayton, and you'll find me.
Right on. Bryan, wonderful story. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your energy. Have a great 26, man.
Joe, thank you for having me on. I loved it.
Yes, sir.